to be the first kind of quantitative study of how MPs or political leaders from political families do. Are they more productive as compared to leaders who made it on their own? And the study's been done by the Indian School of Business faculty member, so it looks really, really authoritative. Now we're going to go through the details of that study with the author of the study who's joining us from Bangalore. And we also have, if you talk about political families, one of the oldest political families and one of the youngest leaders, Dynasts Chautala over here. We also have Chakshu Rai from PRS joining us, and as I said, the author of the study, Prasanna Tantri, Senior Associate Director from the Indian School of Business, joining us from Bangalore. Let's just first see exactly what this study says and on what it's based its data on.
The Gen Next of Indian politics carrying on their family's name. But are they really delivering? According to a recent study by the Indian School of Business, they are not. The paper titled "How Do Political Dynasts Perform? Evidence from India" compared the performance of MPs who belong to political dynasties with comparable MPs who do not belong to any political family. The study analyzed a comprehensive set of 17 performance indicators ranging from GDP growth to performance in parliament. Per capita GDP growth for the 5-year period is lower by anywhere between 10% to 13.7% in constituencies represented by dynasts. Crime growth is higher by about 15% in areas represented by political families. Not only this, the attendance levels of dynasts is also lower by about 5.4% on an average. But does this study speak for all political heirs? That's the debate on agenda.
So the Indian School of Business study says they're not as productive as the other leaders. But I just want to point out that according to PRS data and a story NDTV had done earlier, Dynasts Chautala was one of the MPs, and he's a 4th generation political leader from his family, that he was one of the top performers, right, Chakshu? Okay, so let's just get Prasanna Tantri first to talk about his study, which he's saying is the first time someone's looked at the data and said, how well are they doing? I just wanted to ask you, sir, that your study says they're not performing just as well. But did you which specific families or were you looking at?
So we are looking at average effect and not a particular individual or any particular family. Of course, there will be examples of some MPs from political dynasties who would have done well, but what we look at is average effect. And more importantly, we also control for other dimensions. For example, it's possible that a dynastic MP may be well educated, more educated than a non-dynastic MP. So our study, the econometric specification that we use carefully controls for all those differences. In one line, if I have to say, what we find is controlling for all that. For example, with similar two MPs with similar education levels, similar crime records, similar asset levels, all other things being similar, one is a dynast, one is a non-dynast, we find on an average non-dynast does well. So again, I emphasize this is on an average and not a judgment on each and every dynastic MP. Of course, there will be exceptions.
So it's interesting, you look at things like attendance, you found their attendance was lower, suggesting that they take things for granted. You look at how much they're spending, and they felt that they were spending much lower as well. One quick question before I ask Dynasts Chautala to respond to that, is that one of the things that you use is GDP growth of their constituency. Now I want to ask you, is that really fair to look at a zone? I mean, an MP could be representing a particularly backward area. So the GDP growth of that area, a reflection on their performance?
Yeah. So this is a main concern, that we face in any academic study. We have been careful to control for all this. Basically, if you see our identification strategy, we compare dynastic MPs who defeat non-dynastic MPs by a very close margin. These form our treatment group, like any experiment. Our control group is non-dynastic MPs who defeat dynastic candidates. Sorry, the person who's defeated is a candidate by a very, very close margin. When I say, we use a method called regression discontinuity. So somebody who wins by say 0.5%. In the eyes of a median voter, both are similar. The only difference is one is a dynast and the other one is not. So we've been careful to control for all these observable differences that you talk about, the levels of GDP, crime records and all individual characteristics. I repeat, these are after controlling for all these differences observable, and we've also done some methods to control for possibly unobservable differences, like say a dynast may be more interested in politics, maybe more charismatic. We try to control for all these as well. So this is after controlling for all these effects, and on an average we find dynasts do better. Non-dynasts do better than dynasts. So that's how it works.
So Dushyant Chautala, it's over to you. ISB, the Indian School of Business, says in Hyderabad, which is they've done their first kind of authoritative study, and they think that all of you are not faring as well, and it's something that
This
which
is
the opposition, which many political...
This is our personal opinion, not necessarily ISB's. I'm sorry.
Okay, I understand. Yeah.
A friend there at Hyderabad, the way he has explained that dynastic politicians have not worked as well in the parliament, you have to go see how much the time they spend in their constituency, because if I talk about myself or anybody from Haryana who's been a second generation, third generation politician, we have to spend fairly more time to with our constituents, and not only to our constituent, it has to be pan state, and some people have to be pan nation also.
Yeah.
You cannot be limited to another 20 lakh people who voted you in. You have to go across. If I talk about Haryana, it's 1.5 crore.
So you're
votes.
saying time spent in a constituency should also be a factor?
It should be, because
it's not a factor in your study just yet, is it? Is it, Mr. Tanvi?
If I can respond, yeah. Of course, I can't measure time spent, but we look at things like, say, allocation under NREGA. So the idea is, if an MP is very effective, he may get more grants from central government and all that. Look at allocation under NREGA. We look at public sector capital expenditure investments. We look at road building.
Intervene in between.
Go ahead.
As you talking about Manrega spending, my constituency has 200+% Manrega spending. And if you
I'm
talk
sorry, sir,
about
I'm not talking about your
the
constituency.
work I have got it done, being in the opposition, my constituency's GDP has grown.
I think Dushyant
it has to
Chautala,
be.
he's not talking about yours. I think he's talking in general. You won't accept, okay, Chakshu, right, as being part of PRS, that's what you do. Look at how MPs are performing. Would you by and large agree with the ISB study?
Sunita, the short answer, I don't think would do justice to the topic. I think the study, and I had some time to take a look at the study. I think the study presents a conclusion which is fairly simple, but the moment you want to go underneath the conclusion, there are, detailed factors. Now, let me pick up a couple of them.
Yeah.
Right. So, for example, you mentioned GDP growth.
Yes.
But let's take the example of, let's say, social security schemes as to how they are doing on the ground.
Yeah.
Law and order situation on the ground. That is something that a representative of a people's representative does not control.
And which this study looks at.
Some of the factors seem to indicate that, there are factors which are beyond the control of a member of parliament, which are part of the metrics.
But he's right in looking at attendance and looking
Absolutely.
at MP-led spending, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, the devil, as always, is in the details.
Yeah.
Right? So, for example, there could be members of parliament, dynasty parliamentarians and non-dynasty parliamentarians, who might attend parliament but might not sign the register. Right? Because the register is not an indication of attendance. The register is only for claiming 2,000 rupees as a daily allowance.
Do you see that often?
There are times that people have said that they've attended parliament and not signed the register. And it seems to be evident because they've participated in debate, but, parliament marks them as absent. So I think the way to look at some of these things is to say, is there an easy way to define a public representative's job? Can you reduce it to numbers?
Interesting.
Purely?
But I want to come back to Dushyant Chautala. You would accept that when PRS legislators said that you're one of the well-performing MPs, you're one of the fewer ones, right? Because the general perception is that if you're from a political family, it's come too easy to you. And some of that criticism is fair, don't you think?
When we talk about people performing, I'm a first-timer. For me, it's a challenge because leading a party as well as going there, working and getting the voice of Haryana being heard in the parliament, that is my job. But if you talk about other people, if I talk about someone from Uttar Pradesh, you have 80 MPs. How much time do you get? If you're coming from a party like BJP, you have 188 MPs in your party. How much time do
so
they
you're
give
saying
you?
that they won't, even if they wanted to, they would have the...
Most of the people are there. If I talk about Poonam Mahajan today, or Pritima Munde, or if I talk about Ram
Very
Babu,
interesting, yeah.
most of these young parliamentarians want to come out, want to speak, but they don't have the chance because their party is so large. You get a quantitative time according to number of MPs you are there.
I'll get Prasanna Tantri to respond to that in just a bit. I just want the young, because it's all about voters' perception, right, and how they see it. Do you think, are you more with what Dushyant Chautala is saying, or do you accept this study, most of you, in that they're saying that most people from political families don't perform? Yeah. Go ahead.
See, the thing that the survey indicates is about the overall level of the party. So even if there are some exceptions in the party who are performing well in the parliament or the legislative assemblies, the general perception among the public is that they are from a dynastic family and they have the privileges, so they are not performing well at the ground level. And
that's the general perception. And
yes.
do you tend to believe that? Do you believe that?
Yeah.
Why is that? Like who? In what case? Give me a specific instance.
Rahul Gandhi is one person who has not at all sort of fulfilled the promises, and I also believe that the most crucial posts are being given to only the family members. And
You feel
not
that as well?
everyone else.
That the crucial posts are given to family members? Yeah, go ahead.
Are you really happy about the politics in India? I'm sure nobody is happy about what is going on. The reason behind would be that 100% of the Indian MPs under the age of 30 are hereditary members.
Yeah, okay.
So that, I think, explains it all.
Dushyant Chautala, you wanted to, Patrick French is the one who coined that term. That maximum people, most of the young MPs, they're all HMPs, he called it, hereditary MPs.
See, if you talk about India, if you take out the list
And
of...
also respond to her charge of saying that you get party posts as well,
See, if you talk about the 13 MPs who are below 30, I think everybody has a political background. Without that, right out of the college, you cannot. Or you make elections at the age of 18. Let's put it.
But isn't that what's wrong with our system?
No, it's not. If you get out of college, you have the basic education there and you want to contest. Nobody knows you. How would you win an election? You don't even know how the system works.